All right, well, I have after 1 o'clock, so I'm going to get started. So thank you, all of us, for joining us for our Build a World-Class Demand Generation Machine webinar. My name is Brandon Schulte, and I'm the Director of Marketing Technology Services at Zerobi. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First, a recording will be made available for the presentation today, and it will be made available following the conclusion of the event. Secondly, please use the chat window to ask questions, and we will address those at the end of the presentation. Lastly, whenever possible, please mute yourself during the presentation. Like most of you right now, I'm at home with several children, so fingers crossed there will be no interruptions during the presentation. So to start off, a little background on me. My name is Brandon Schulte. I am the Director of Marketing Technology Services at Zerobi, like I said. I have 15 years of marketing technology and leadership experiences at Zerobi, Gallup, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and Progressive Insurance. I've had a lot of experience with the challenges that you all face day in and day out as marketing and sales leaders to grow revenue while optimizing channel efficiency and external spend and employee productivity. I've been fortunate to work with many organizations to grow highly scalable sales pipelines and e-commerce revenue while utilizing technology solutions, process enhancements, and customer analytics. So a little background about Zerobi. So Zerobi was founded just over a year ago as a partnership between Xeris, which is an IT consulting firm based in Des Moines, Iowa, and OBI Creative Services, a regional Midwest ad agency based in Omaha, Nebraska. We help craft customer centricity through data and insights. As you all know, the paradigm in marketing has been changing, and we've helped companies shift their marketing driven by this new technology and customer demands to thrive in this new marketing landscape. Our expertise in technology, data, performance marketing, analytics, and marketing automation helps create customer-first organizations, which is what we're all after, resulting in faster revenue growth, higher return on investment, and an improved operational efficiency for our clients. So to start off, what does world-class demand generation look like? So first, it's about discovering hidden demand. How do we unlock the potential of your customers by anticipating customer needs to avoid missed opportunities? This includes the ability to avoid stockouts, but also to recognize when customers need different products and services that you may not know. So an example in my personal life is right now I'm looking to build a deck in my backyard with composite decking. So recently I was at one of the big home improvement stores and had been looking around their website. And ever since signing up and kind of putting in my deck builder calculation on their online website, they've been notifying me of sales that involve different deck materials that I've been looking for, and the framing materials to build the deck as well. So because of their knowledge of me, they've been able to try to provide things that may be of interest to me in the future. So that's one example. The next example is being able to scale communication across channels. So we help create customer experiences that meet customers where they are and drive customer loyalty, which is what we all want to do. How do we find the right channel to meet that customer's need and ultimately put our product and service in front of them so it makes sense for them to be able to become a customer or continue their relationship with us? So an example of this is I have 3 kids, as I mentioned earlier. We have numerous activities, COVID-19 notwithstanding, whether that's baseball practice or soccer practice or tumbling or dance or what have you. Me and my wife are on the go all the time. So I found that companies that tend to be successful in earning my business when we're on the go send me coupons late in the afternoon, letting me know that a pizza may be on sale or I can get a discount for takeout food. And that's where we're able to kind of scale that communication, whether I look on my email, whether it's pop-up ads as I'm going through things or as I'm doing search, different things tend to pop up. And that's an example of how you're able to scale the demand across the channels. Next, being able to attribute revenue to spend. I know this is something all marketers struggle with and is probably one of the big bugaboos of the marketing and advertising industry. How do I figure out what I spend is actually contributing to my bottom line? And so what we try to do is help connect activities to dollars to generate the best return for your costs. So an example of this is at a past employer, My CFO came to me and said that we were $4 million short of our e-commerce goal for the year. And he wanted to know if in the last quarter, what it would take to spend to be able to make that back up. So what we did is, because we were able to have good practices in place to understand and attribute revenue back from what activities, we were able to put together a plan that spent additional money in paid search, paid social, email marketing, print ads, different pieces of our sales funnel to be able to really understand, okay, this is what I need to spend. And I was able to go with him with what our advertising budget would be. And then based on the different activities that we knew that would convert, we were able to ultimately create a vision to be able to reach that goal. And we fortunately were able to reach that goal and hit that goal by the end of the year. So that's the real key of being able to attribute the revenue back to spend. And lastly, world-class demand generation allows optimizing marketing effectiveness. We all have constraints on our resources, and it's important to remove the barriers to maximize the effectiveness of your team. Now, this could be using technology, this could be process changes, or it could be training people to make them more effective with what they're being asked to do. Recently, I saw a survey by HubSpot that estimated that one-third of marketers' time is spent on manual tasks, which is incredibly huge waste of time. So by investing in the right technology, processes, and systems, you can save that time and be able to do more with the same amount of people. So first and foremost, what is the recipe for success? We all want to have that. We all know what that looks like. What are the pieces to get us where we need to go? So it starts with a 360-degree customer view. This is the foundation, where a unified person and account record that aggregates the relevant activities that users and companies are doing with your brand, and is able to stitch those interactions together regardless of the device or platform that the customer uses. That data can then be leveraged not only by your marketing team, but by various functional units of the business to create more meaningful interactions and deepen that relationship with your customer. So this would be increasing things like your average order value, being able to cross-sell, being able to upsell, and being able to ultimately increase the lifetime value of your customer based on what you know about that person. Second, it involves dynamic personalization. This not only means reaching customers where they are, as we already talked about how important it is to reach in the right channels, but optimizing that for each person to boost conversion rates and increase loyalty. Next, there's campaign automation. So how can I use low touch, no touch, or just-in-time messaging to navigate customers through their journey in the most efficient manner possible? This automation should work for us 24/7, 365, that allows our company to make money while we're working, while we're sleeping, and while we're away from work with our friends and family. And lastly, revenue performance management. This is the ability to attribute the revenue to costs and to understand the role that each touch point plays in that customer journey, which allows the company to efficiently manage resources to increase the output of every input, thus making 1 + 1 = 3, versus today when sometimes 1 + 1 hopefully equals 2, but sometimes 1 + 1 equals less than 2, which obviously is a problem. And that's what we want to combat with our initiatives. So to start out, in terms of the 360-degree view of the customer, I think everyone that's on this call, as well as most people that are in similar roles, understand the value of an integrated picture of their customers. But oftentimes, many things get in the way. Systems don't work together. There are cross-functional teams with different priorities. There's lack of organizational buy-in and the value of getting this data all together. A process takes too long or is too hard. We believe that data, and more to the point, that after your people is the most valuable asset that you have in your company. The companies that are able to maximize their data have a huge competitive advantage over those in the marketplace. But don't feel like you're alone in struggling with your data. All firms struggle getting value out of their data, but the ones that really put investment into the value of that data and really try to harness the insights that come from it are the ones that differentiate themselves, especially in the environment that we find ourselves today. When things are moving fast-paced, it's difficult to get customers' demand, and we have so many channels that we need to work in. So to start off, if you're looking at the channels, obviously there are so many that we need to play in, whether it's SEO, search, paid, public relations, social media, online marketing, email marketing. There's a lot that we need to do, but too often we focus on the tactical aspects of how do we get all of our media in these different channels that we don't take a step back and ask some fundamental questions about what we need to do in order to be successful. So the first thing that I would say is, do we have a unified record of your customer? Are all the sources relevant? All the sources data that you have, are they relevant and are they being captured from that? So that could be things like, are they captured in CRM, e-commerce transactions, web visits, email marketing opens and clicks, any personalization engines that you have, webinars like this. And then how are you using those touch points to be able to drive revenue? I think it's also important that we're able to share data. Does your company have a data governance plan with where data should be shared throughout the organization? Is it democratized so all front touch points that work with customers are able to see the complete picture of that customer? So if I'm on the sales team, am I able to see the total picture of that customer? If I'm on the marketing team, am I able to see what that customer's done so I can send the right campaigns? If I'm on the customer service team and somebody has an issue, am I able to see what they're working with and what's relevant to them at that time? And then lastly, with attributing revenue to spend, do you have a multi-touch attribution model? I know a lot of firms, right or wrong, have a first touch or last touch attribution model, but are you able to touch all the different activities and give value to them for all the different pieces? Because very rarely, whether it's B2C or B2B, is that a simple somebody comes to your site and buys, or somebody fills out a lead form and the salesperson instantly converts them. There's generally a lot of process that needs to happen between that first time that that customer interacted with your brand and the last one. And how are you able to attribute that and then use that data to back up how you're spending to put a total program together? An example that I can think of is recently we worked with a company that was one of the top 25 airport authority, ran one of the top 25 airports in America. And when you started looking at their customer data, you could see that one person that was a very valuable customer was in our event management system because she attended an event. She was in the company's webinar system because she had attended a webinar. She had worked with salespeople, so she had sales opportunities. She subscribed to the webinar, so that was in a different internal database. She had bought products online, so that was in the e-commerce database. But there was no one unifying aspect where all that was tied together, so you could see that complete picture of that customer. While certain people had certain visions into that customer, very few places saw the complete picture. And that's what we can help do by putting the data together and having that 360-degree customer view. So when I think of the customer architecture, it starts with data aggregation. So this is the client side and server side tagging that allows you to connect transactional activities into that unified customer record. So this could be things like when somebody visits the website, when they make purchases, when they view content, or it could be something that like a lead in the CRM system or a conversation with a salesperson. It could be someone who called into our customer service team because they had an issue with a product. It could be all the emails that the person gets, whether that is service emails, whether those are marketing emails, or whether those are fulfillment emails. And it could be things like customer fulfillment and point of sale systems. This also should include all the compliance tools of where the data exists within the person. So a lot of different legal compliances, whether you work international with GDPR, firms that work in California with CCCPA, I have to make sure that they're able to get data and know what data can be passed downstream that can be used and what data can't. The other big thing is that it needs to be captured in real time to be able to activate. You're not going to be able to personalize somebody's journey on a website if you're not able to aggregate that and flight it to the right system in the real time. The next piece is being able to create a standardized data structure that you see in the blue box here that brings all that data together. Each different platform is going to have different attributes and different values that are going to speak to what that customer is doing with your brand. But until you're able to data map those and standardize those, it's going to be difficult for you to glean the value out of those different activities. Next, you need to create a centralized customer hub where there's a master transactional record. This is that 360-degree view of the customer. It aggregates data from various touch points, and then based on the activities, personas are created that can be activated later in the process. Examples of this could be VIP customers that are some of your high value buyers, people that abandon carts, or maybe people that browse websites but don't actually convert. The next thing is being able to integrate that data into your various systems. So now that you've collected it, integrated, have it ready to go, you need to be able to flight that data and connect to things like your email automation platform, or if you're trying to send that abandoned cart email. You need to be able to personalize the experience based on your knowledge of that customer on the website, so somebody gets content that's relevant to them. And then lastly, you need to be able to activate data real time. So to use that knowledge, that customer record, to intervene real time to provide the relevant products or services to that person to customize that experience. And that kind of leads us into dynamic campaign management that helps us nurture somebody along their journey to fulfill their needs and ultimately deepen the relationship with our company. So next, we want to look at a 360-degree data roadmap. And these are kind of the steps that we built that show the process from start to finish, with how the best way is to get your data in a state where it can be used. So it starts by your data inventory. So first and foremost, a report by Blissfully found that the average firm uses an average of 120 different applications. That's pretty scary when you think of regulations like GDPR, which is the right to be forgotten, among other things, in Europe, and CCPA, which went into effect earlier this year, about how you have to store and manage and sell customer, or if you store, manage, or sell customer data. It also means, from a customer journey perspective, and unless you know your sources of data, your team will never get a complete picture of your customer. Data governance, while not exciting, it might be the most important initiative that you have to get right. This structures who your company collects and aggregates. This structures how your company collects, aggregates, and transmits data. It defines when records are updated and when they're not. For example, a service member who lives in Iowa who opened a checking account at a local branch bank, we have information such as address, phone number, and different things like that on that person. Then say he is in the Army, he gets deployed to Germany, and while he's in Germany, he opens up a new credit card application while we're in Germany. Now the fact that he's in Germany, a whole host of other data applications and compliance reasons need to be dictated. So we need to be able to verify what updates in master record, what compliance standards do we have to match, and then if the data is shared between systems, how are we able to reconcile what we have? So on one side, we have a city, state, and zip for his address in Des Moines, Iowa. Now he's in Germany. He's filled out a form and he says his company or his country is Germany. We can't just simply update his country as Germany and still keep his address in the US. So we need to know what are the rules and logic to be able to do that. And that's where the data governance model comes into play. The next thing is developing user stories. So these define the outcomes. When we want to send an abandoned cart, say we want to send an abandoned cart email within 24 hours to anyone who drops off during the purchase process. Or if a customer buys product X, we want to upsell product Y. These are the types of user stories that we need to define so we know what we need to ultimately build, buy, or implement in order to be successful. From an integration standpoint, we need to know what systems need to be connected. For example, your marketing automation system, CRM system, and customer service system should all be connected together so people from sales, marketing, and customer service can see the relevant attributes of what happened in the other customer touch points in order to be successful. That requires us understanding how the systems work together to be able to map that data back and forth so we can see the complete picture. In terms of activation, we need to know what visualizations, notifications, or channels do we plan to activate that insight. So based on what somebody's done with our brand, we say, hey, we want to do a digital retargeting campaign based on the activities that we have. Okay, great. We need to be able to connect into the Google Display Network. or to the trade desk, or we're on Facebook or LinkedIn, so we need to be able to serve that content to Facebook for retargeting, for example. Lastly, we need to be able to refine as we go along. So how do we optimize our customer experience to evolve our communication with the customer as we go along the process? So after getting your data foundation in place, the next ingredient is to add personalization to your marketing mix. This is something we all want to do and means customizing customer experiences based on what you know about them. For example, as a consumer, think of how powerful it is when a company reduces the friction during your interaction with that brand. So think a Zappos shoes purchase or an Amazon purchase. Using factors such as buying behavior, location, familiarity with the brand, and product interest allows the company to be able to serve the right content to the user. So an example might be someone in Northern California that we know has a family and is interested in traveling might see an ad for Disneyland as a pop-up as they go throughout the site, or being able to see sales for Disneyland. While a similar user that lives in Atlanta, Georgia might get a similar ad, but instead of for Disneyland, maybe it's Disney World that they're focusing on. Because of our knowledge of our customers, we're able to serve the right content to the right person, the right context, and not have a one-size-fits-all approach. Another example might be that user's context. Perhaps the person has a family, but they travel for business often. Therefore, on nights and weekends, leisure travel is highlighted when they come to our site. But during the day, we're going to show destinations that we know that they book for business travels, because that's a very different experience that they're looking for, depending on whether they're looking to travel for personal reasons or professional reasons. So this leads to a customer expectation gap, as we all have seen. So how do we avoid this customer expectation gap? While the previous scenarios make sense, too often companies fail to understand customers due to a variety of factors. Data silos, lack of budget and resources, or they haven't considered the customer journey to be a strategic priority yet. This leads to the gap where users are expecting one thing based on their experience with leaders like Amazon and getting something far different. This gap not only reduces conversions during selling opportunities, but even for customers who buy your products, it leads to reduced loyalty and increases the risk that they will leave your company for a company that offers a better deal. So an example of this might be someone comes to your brand, they expect to get the latest Tesla concept car, and instead they get the Griswold mobile from vacation. So let's look at what good personalization looks like versus bad personalization. So on the good personalized experience, meet John, who is a technology salesperson who lives in the Bay Area. He's a free business traveler with a particular airline. The first step in the process is the airline has collected not only his purchase transactions, but also his behavior, such as online activities, app activity, and email, other customer touch points. That data has been centralized into a profile that tells John's story. Based on his lifetime value of the company, they've added him to 4 key persona groups. So you can see he's more likely to convert on mobile. He browses on the desktop. His lifetime value is over $10,000, and he prefers to travel from the San Francisco International Airport. And based on that, they're able to trigger different activities like that. So as you go through the scenario here, he's looking to book a business trip to Denver for a trade show later this year. So a couple months before the trip, he looks at the website, but instead of filling out the reservation, he abandons his cart. Because the company knows him and what he likes to do, they email and they start retargeting him with display ads. Unfortunately, he ignores those. And so they know that since he converts on mobile, why don't we push a notification to him when the flight is almost sold out? That does the trick, and he goes online on his phone and purchases the trip on mobile. Because we know that he's purchased it, we're going to remove him from the campaigns. Exit triggers, in many cases, are just as important as entrance triggers. So we don't continue to email him about something we know that he's bought. We update his lifetime value within our system so we can continue to understand his value as a customer. And then because we know, maybe in this case, instead of flying out of San Francisco International Airport, he's flying out of the Oakland Airport because whatever, the time fit better for him or the price was better. So we're going to start sending customer care information about things to do at the Oakland Airport since he's not as familiar about that as good customer service. So that's a perfect example of how good personalization should work when you have the data together and it mixes with the personalization. On the flip side, let's look at another example. I moved to Omaha from Lincoln about 4 years ago. At my old house, we used a lawn service that did a nice job for me at that time. However, they don't have a location in Omaha where I live now, so before I moved, I canceled the service. Now imagine my surprise when the following spring, someone from that service called up to see if they could service my yard again that year. I thought, hey, no big deal, it happens. So I told them once again I moved. However, they continue to call me that year, and every subsequent year after that, I get 2 to 3 calls for them asking me if they can re-up my service. And every time I have to tell them, hey, I moved, you don't service me in my area, it doesn't work. While this pestering really hasn't led me to not purchase the service again, since it wouldn't be an option anyway, I have spoken to numerous friends that do live in the market where they currently have, and have and told them about how this has affected me and this bad customer experience. While it may not have directly affected them, it could indirectly help, as we've all seen the studies where people that are extremely satisfied with good service tell a handful of people, where people that are dissatisfied with service tell significantly more. While I'm not trying to hammer this business in particular, I wanted to use it as an illustration to show how many times something similar has happened to you, and remember how to help you remember how personalized experiences make you feel. Sometimes a bad personalized experience is worse than no personalized experience at all. So how do you get started with dynamic personalization? So a few steps can help anybody get started. First, start with journey mapping. Start thinking through the user flow with your business. How do you communicate with people who are in the awareness and what content or assets needed versus how do you communicate when they're in the consideration or purchase of the journey? What assets or channels are used to action? What is the loss flow as someone moves through your customer experience? And how do you lead the customer down your desired path? The next part is looking at the touch point messaging. When you think different touch points that you have with customers, how to navigate consumers, different channels, both digital, in person, and apps, so you're able to ultimately lead them to where you want to go and what they need from you. The companies that are best able to do that with the right messaging at the right time are generally the ones that earn the business. Next, when you look at success metrics, you want to be able to have a criteria with how you track success. So what are your KPIs that drive your results? This could be things like average order value, lifetime value, conversion rate, as well as many other things. Whatever makes sense for your business. But you need to make sure that you have those clearly defined and articulated so your team knows what they're going after in terms of their goals. What behaviors or activities lead to greater sales? This is where doing analysis of your data is really helpful, because the more that you understand about the different activities that lead to increased likelihood of purchase, the better your company is going to be. So for example, if I knew that somebody comes to my website and reads this case study and then goes to an event, that allows the person to be 3 times more likely to convert than someone who doesn't do those 2 activities together, I would focus all my marketing efforts, or a lot of my marketing efforts, on how do I get people to go do those 2 activities, because I know historically they produce good things for my company. Now that we have personalization and the customer 360 covered, I want to talk through campaign automation. This is how you deliver on those customer experiences at scale. A recent survey by Accenture found that marketing teams need the following things to be successful. First, they need tools that are easy to learn and use. One of the greatest things we see when it comes to frustration and lack of adoption by marketing teams of technology is that the systems or tools were too difficult to use. Additionally, many marketing leaders report a skills gap. A recent study found that 2/3 of companies report that they don't have the right skills or talent to effectively use marketing technology. Secondly, teams are stymied by systems that are not connected to each other. We talked about this a little earlier. This leads to poor segmentation. Think of a batch and blast campaign versus surgical email campaign, and less than a 360-degree view of the customer. Third, skill gaps and technical limitations rely on the marketing team to work with their counterparts in IT. Too often we find the nature of the work in marketing differs from that in technology. Even agile technology teams still work in the concept of sprints, which are a few weeks to a month, whereas marketers work in the concept of days, hours, minutes, and sometimes even less than that to respond to customer demands. Additionally, this requires a level of customization and flexibilities that many organizations struggle to achieve. Lastly, even if marketing teams meet or exceed demand generation goals, too often we find there's a disconnect between the marketing and their friends in sales or e-commerce with what constitutes a good prospect, leading to frustration and success throughout, frustration and difficulties throughout the business. As customer journeys have become more complex and more tools become available, many companies have taken the approach to turn to more SaaS products or software as a service products to fill needs. While most tools provide value, the sheer magnitude of tools and the requirements for each tool differs. Add to the mix that in many cases, the tools were selected for different teams and even different functional units within the company. The synergy within a technical stack can start showing diminishing or even negative returns, which is something we don't want to ever have happen. When you think of your technology stack, do you see balance, harmony, and the sums greater than its parts, like we see with the rocks balanced by the beach? Or do you see a Frankenstein of tools that don't fit together? For example, I recently worked with a company that had Salesforce as its CRM system, Vendavo as its CPQ system, Oracle Projects as its project management system, Power BI as its reporting system, DocuSign to sign contracts, Oracle Financials to handle the financial and accounting aspects of the business and billing, Zendesk as its customer service platform, Magento as its e-commerce system, On24 as its a webinar platform, Cvent as its event platform, Eloqua as its marketing automation system, and then they use both AWS and Azure data marts to store internal company data about their customers. If you don't have an integrated way to put that all together, it can definitely lead to trouble for an organization. So part of the problem is that there's lots of options and little direction. So how does this marketing technology monster get created that unfortunately too many of us know too well? There are two main reasons. The first is that we found that companies are well-intentioned, but the sheer multitude of options when considering a marketing automation system roadmap are overwhelming. The Chief MarTech blog and the Discover MarTech conference put out their annual list of MarTech vendors last week. As you can see by the map, which looks to me like one you'd find it at an amusement park or a zoo with various lands, there are now over 8,000 companies that offer solutions in a host of different areas, from marketing automation to CRM to content management systems to activation platforms to web analytics platforms and more. It's unreasonable to think that one person within an organization could be familiar with all the options and how they fit together. This is why most firms benefit from a trusted provider that works across many different companies and technologies to put the right technical stack together. In our experience, the ability for systems to integrate with one another is just as important as the overall features to utilize the full value of the tool to achieve the desired return on the investment. The second main reason for automation gaps and inefficiencies stems from the different capacity for technology versus people or organizations to change. By its very nature, technology changes quickly. The half-life of any software system seems to happen overnight. What is great today is quickly yesterday's news. At the same time, I think it would be accurate to say that most people dislike change. And as people make up organizations, most organizations change much more slowly than the technology platforms they use. This means over time, a widening gap begins to exist, which necessitates organizations to undergo a major reset or a major change with how they're doing things. Oftentimes, this happens when someone new comes in an organization and wants to use a technology that he or she is familiar with. And sometimes that change can be a net plus. For example, investing in tools that allow you to aggregate data and personalize the customer experience, like we've already talked about. And other times, the change is for the sake of change and significant effort is expended without demonstrable benefits. So how do we make sure that automation technology generates the business utility that your team needs? We've come up with a few key ingredients for success. First, you need to understand your objectives. You should clearly be able to articulate what is needed and why. What will the future state allow you to do that the current state does not? What is the value of this investment? Does it increase revenue, decrease costs, or reduce the time to purchase? Secondly, conduct a gap analysis. Where do gaps exist within your process? This could be in the form of a hypothesis statement like, we are unable to send abandoned cart emails to users who don't complete purchases. Is that because you don't have an email automation system? Because your e-commerce and email systems aren't integrated? Because you don't have resources to create the content? Or because you can't get the data to see who abandons transactions? Or maybe it's several of these issues combined. Putting those all together will help you understand where your gaps are in your process and what you need to do to address them. Next, you need to look at your people, processes, and systems. Too often we think that a piece of technology can be the silver bullet to solve our problems. Often technology does help, and as a technology firm, we're proponents of technology, but if your people aren't able to utilize the tool to its potential and your processes don't adapt to the new state, then much of the value is lost. Take, for instance, a company who started out with a demand generation problem by investing in CRM, marketing, automation, and the customer data platform. They were able to increase their pipeline of activities from a few hundred per day to several thousand per day. However, they didn't change the processes that ultimately send a lead over to the sales team by investing in a lead scoring model. So the sales team went from a manageable number of leads per day to getting more leads that could be handled. So prospects weren't getting followed up with in a timely fashion. And the sales team became frustrated because the additional leads weren't yielding in an equivalent amount of value. They seem to be working harder for the same amount of value that they're having before. So unfortunately, those other three investments didn't matter because they didn't change their process. Next, you need to be able to rank your priorities. I haven't found a company yet that has the budget or resources to invest in everything that they want or need to do. So you need to use an objective metric like net present value to determine which projects to invest in, which can wait, and which are unnecessary. Then make sure to gain leader buy-in. This would include executive sponsors that are aware of the project and provide funding, but also the project team that ultimately is responsible for executing on the project and running the system and/or processes once they're carried out. Don't forget about including teams that are tangentially related to the project. So for example, if you're investing in a new customer service system, it probably makes sense to understand how customer activities impact the sales team, impact the marketing team, and also perhaps impact the customer service team that fulfill the products after the product's sold. Lastly, create a budget that is not just for the automation software expenditure, but also the people and resources involved. Too often, companies just look at what the investment is in software costs and fail to understand the, the different investments needed in people in order to make the process ready. Also be able to be sure to assess the opportunity cost of this project versus other projects that would be limited or delayed by this initiative to verify that it is the one that you want to do. Once the project is greenlit, start by setting SMART objectives. So those that are specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound for the project. What will be accomplished? When will it be complete? What are the steps along the way? And how are we tracking success? Next, determine whether you hire, train, or outsource the skills needed for the new project, both in terms of implementation and activation. Third, determine what components will be built and what will be bought. A general rule of thumb is to build anything related to your core competencies or the value propositions as a business that set your company apart. and to buy the tools where the functionality is not as strategic to your product offering. So for an example, buy a CRM system, don't invest the resources in building a CRM system or a marketing automation system. Use those tools that are off the shelf and take advantage of the value other companies are using and the company that you're partnering with has to build out their tool. Nothing is going to be perfect. Look for something that you like or love 80% of the tool and can live with, customize, or extend the last 20% of the functionality, either within your systems, processes, or with other tools that may bolt on to that initial investment. Create a roadmap that sets the waypoints along the way. Generally, the more successful rollouts are iterative, where the functionality comes online throughout the project rather than in a big final reveal. This helps build value during the implementation and builds interest within the team and organization. Fifth, communicate progress. Your company in many cases has made a substantial investment in this project, so it's critical to detail how you're progressing related to your goals. Wins that can be publicized throughout the process are extremely important. From that end, celebrate milestones along the way. It is important that the key team is recognized for their contributions, both internally and externally. This also creates excitement for the project and additional future capital for the next time you request budget for a tool or initiative. Be sure to audit the progress as you go along. What is on track and what isn't? What is meeting expectations and what is falling short of expectations? This will enable your project team to intervene real time to make adjustments as needed. Lastly, be sure to optimize as you go. Rarely do things go as they are drawn up, and those teams that are most able to adjust on the fly generally see better outcomes. The last ingredient for success is its tie results or revenue back to your program. Most companies realize that they need to do something, as the cartoon illustrates. Unfortunately, too often they aren't sure what that something should be. And the actual data backs as someone who has been a long time in education and business, it is concerning to me many leaders and their companies struggle with decision making. And it's sad to think how much consternation this creates within a business and the missed opportunity that companies are seeing. Before we go forward, let's go backwards to understand the evolution of marketing analytics. It used to be that all sales and marketing was one. Think the town a few hundred years ago that basically had a quota of, say, you need to sell 50 newspapers today and come back once they're all gone. Sometimes today you see this as a person dressed up as the Statue of Liberty during tax season or someone wearing a sandwich board outside of a restaurant. Then we evolved into the traveling salesperson who had an annual sales quota and sold a suite of products. Next came the media plan, where a celebrity would appear on TV, radio, or print ads to support the brand. Nowadays, we're in an omni-channel environment with online and offline channels that all flow into your sales funnel. The analytics needed for each of these stages were different, ranging from how many newspapers the salesperson returned with at the end of the day, to web, email, paid, social, traditional media, B2B, or B2C metrics that are needed to track success today. The always-on campaign is the hallmark of digital marketing and needed to reach the fast-paced consumers of today in a very competitive landscape. Competing for distracted consumers via web searches, constantly full inboxes, and full news feeds. As we touched on earlier, customers expect that when you reach out to them, that you know them and give them something of value in return for patronizing your product. They expect you to be willing to reach them with message on multiple channels and in different touch points. Some prefer a reach out from a salesperson, others prefer something that they can interact or self-service on their own. Customers expect instant gratification and instant fulfillment of products, as well as the ability to pay with different payment methods and in multiple currencies. All those things that are critical to our success with a global brand today. So with that said, how do we determine who gets credit with multiple touch points? How are we, and with all the touch points, how are marketers supposed to understand what works? As someone who has played, coached, and refereed sports most of my life, an analogy that resonates with me is who gets credit for the score, in this case in soccer. While sports do it a little differently, these statistics don't just determine who wins and loses the game, but in the professional ranks, it determines who gets a bonus or a new contract and who gets cut or traded. As you can see in the diagram above, the striker gets credited for the goal and the left wing gets credited for the assist. But what about the midfielder who controlled possession, finding the wing open, running down the flank with a great pass, or the defender who began the attack with a pass to the midfielder, or even the goalkeeper who stopped a shot from the opposing team that started the scoring play? You could argue without any of those activities happen, that the goal would not have happened. In many ways, sports represents not only life, but business. Think of the sales process in most B2B opportunities. While the salesperson gets the credit for the sale and the commission, there was the on-demand webinar that ultimately drove the prospect to sign up for the event. There was the newsletter that highlighted the webinar that the person signed up for. There was a paid retargeting campaign that led the prospect to sign up for the newsletter. And there was the organic search ranking that first got the person in the site during an organic search to be entered into the retargeting campaign. Just like scoring a goal in soccer, it is doubtful that the sale would have occurred without the combination of the other 5 activities. Here are a few steps to creating the right analytics. To determine the framework to drive success within your business, the first step is validating your data. What is the source of success? What is the source of truth, and how does that ultimately equate to your success? Secondly, being able to attribute revenue from different marketing activities can be difficult. I worked with a company that ran paid search ads on Google, paid social ads on Facebook, and used Google Analytics for e-commerce reporting. Each platform had different attribution models. For example, Google Analytics used the last touch method to attribute sales by channels, whereas Facebook and AdWords use attribution models that gave channels credit when a user clicked or even served an ad within 30 days of the sale. This led to a situation where one year, Facebook showed its ad revenue led to several $1 million, mainly through indirect activities, which no doubt assisted the sales, whereas Google Analytics showed the direct revenue tied to Facebook ads was approximately 5% of the total value that Facebook sought credit for. There is a $7 million gap, which is obviously a problem. Reporting must be transparently shared through different stages of the funnel. For example, email analytics should aggregate with web visits, form conversions, and CRM leads and opportunities in order to tell the full story. Fourth, dashboards must not be created just for senior leadership, but also for tactical users that make decisions on campaigns. The old adage that using historical reporting to make decisions is like looking in the rearview mirror while driving is true. However, if your analytics are real-time, better decisions can be made on which campaigns to shut down and which to give more budget. Next, tie investments to results. As we've showed earlier, only 2 in 5 marketing decisions are based on data. Think of the value to your organization if even 70 to 80% of your decisions were based on results. Even if your goal is to get 100% quantified, all your decisions 100% quantified by data, 70 to 80% is a good starting point. Lastly, by leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence, you can take your analytics to new heights and discover value that you didn't even know you were missing. We've covered a lot of ground today, and hopefully you found the presentation valuable. While some of the concepts discussed don't happen overnight, we can tell from personal experience that they are worth the investment. And you don't have to embark on these initiatives alone. At Zerobi, we sit at the intersection of marketing, technology, and strategy. Our companies have a combined half century of experience working with firms just like yours. With 4 product families, MarTech, which includes CRM, marketing automation, customer data platforms, marketing technology, expert services and personalization and testing, performance marketing, which includes demand generation and customer research, analytics, which includes data scientists, artificial intelligence and machine learning, as well as dashboards, and our data architecture group, which includes governance, integration, master data management, and data warehousing. We are able to help create your own recipe for success no matter how far along you are in your demand journey. Our process is to work with your company throughout the journey lifecycle. Starting with an initial research phase, we offer free learning sessions like this webinar and online sessions where appropriate. These supplement our weekly blog posts that highlight relevant industry topics. We also have paid workshops focusing on different areas like lead scoring and revenue performance management, targeted Spark consulting sessions where we dive into a piece of your business, and catalyst sessions where we do an intensive deep dive into your organization to help create your marketing technology roadmap. During the strategy phase, in addition to putting together this roadmap, we come up with the metrics for success, requirements, and steps for success along the way. During the hands-on phase of the project, we can work with your team in various models. Do it for you, do it with you, or show your team how to do it itself. Lastly, we look to optimize our partnership to continue to deliver optimal results as your team and company grow. With that said, I'll turn it over for questions. And I also have left my contact information. If you would like, I'm happy to talk to you further to spark other conversations. Does anybody have any questions based on the presentation? If not, thank you for your time today. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you again for your time joining the conversation today. We really appreciate your interaction, and we look forward to talking to you soon.